Well, hello, everybody. It's Shuttle Sunday time again. Our series that we're going through, starting from STS-1 all the way through. That's the idea. We're going to go through all these missions, and we're on STS-30, which is the 29th mission. And it is, fortunately, with Best Shuttle Atlantis, as I would say. And I'm sure I'm going to get a counter from who's joining with us, which is Sawyer. Hello, Sawyer.
Hello, Chris. I thought we were friends, but Endeavor's the best shuttle. I'll let little slip up go there. It's fine, but we still love Atlantis.
Yes, we've all got our favourites. I think you know what we like to make this interactive. People who are watching the recording of this show will be wondering why I'm asking people questions. It's because we do this show live on Spacecast Live at 3 p.m. Eastern on a Sunday when we do this. So this is live, a live show that we record. So if you're watching the recording, you're probably wondering, wait, maybe you could join in the comment section. Just add your favourite shuttle in the comment section. I'm watching the live chat for their favourite orbiter, and I'm always intrigued to see there's a large widespread, as always. But this one is dedicated to Atlantis. So we are tied in with Shuttle Atlantis, STS-30, with 29th mission. Sawyer, I'm going to bring up the patch, and then we'll give a little overview of this mission and what it was involving.
Absolutely. So, STS-30 or 30R technically, because the actual designation of STS-30 was given to STS-61A, but with their whole weird naming scheme and all of that, it got all confusing with the numbers. So, just for record keeping purposes, this one is technically STS-30R, but on the mission patch that you see here, we have the STS-30 insignia, which was designed in part by all five of the crew members on board. The official designation behind it that you see here is meant to be a joint venture of crewed and uncrewed programs. The sun and inner planets of the solar system are shown with the curve connecting Earth and Venus, symbolizing the shuttle orbit and the trajectory of the payload, Magellan, towards Venus, as well as its subsequent orbit around our sister planet. Also, that ship there, the kind of older Spanish style caravel ship there, is meant to be similar to one of Magellan's ships from the 16th century. Again, given that this was launching Magellan, it still has the seven stars on it to represent the crew of the Space Shuttle Challenger, and the five-star cluster that looked like Cassiopeia there, that is meant to honor the five crew members on board this flight.
Wonderful. I don't particularly find this my favourite patch, but I think for telling the story, I think this is perfect, and that is why they've gone for this with this patch because it is very much a dedicated mission towards the deployment of this spacecraft, which you will see many photographs of later. But let's look at the crew. We've got some of the crew here, and an amazing model, by the way. It's one of the best shuttle models I've seen with a crew
Oh,
portrait. I would love that for my birthday if anyone's out there got one spare. But that shows both the orbiter and is that Columbia again? It is
that is
Columbia again.
Columbia.
Oh dearie me! You see, people who may be new to shuttle or just learn about shuttle, and please, I'd be absolutely grateful if you are just getting shuttle via this series. Welcome. The clue there is the black chines. That is Columbia's telltale giveaway on the model there. But also there's a spacecraft as well. Let's talk about the crew, Sawyer.
Absolutely. So, this was a crew of five, as we were mentioning earlier. So, we have David Walker, who was the commander. You had Ron Grabe, who was the pilot. And then three mission specialists, Mark Lee, Mary Cleve, and MS2 was also flight engineer Norm Thagard, who I have to give a shout out to as a grand supporter of the Challenger Learning Center of Tallahassee, where I worked for years.
Sawyer Flex straight away. Straight in there with the Sawyer Flex.
All right, I'm only 1 for 5 on this crew, okay? Normally, I have more astronauts than I know per
That's
crew.
true. Yes, that is unusual, but still a Sawyer Flex is involved. It wouldn't be a mission without it. But the Challenger Center, for those again, I like to just preface these things in case there's some people who maybe just learning about the space shuttle program, is an absolutely amazing, amazing. How would you describe it? Organization, maybe? Because it's pretty much set up by the families of the lost Challenger crew, isn't it? So, well, let's talk about the Challenger Center just for a little second, sorry, because I think it's important. But they have centers where?
There, at last check, was almost 50 Challenger centers located
Mm,
all across the globe, although primarily in North America. On top of that, they basically are a way for kids to come and learn about STEM and science and space by running simulated space missions. So there's usually a room that's a mission control and a room that's a spacecraft, and students get to come in and play actual roles that mimic the real ones that you would see on shuttle missions, on ISS missions, Dragon missions, things like that, giving them real experience of dealing with navigations, using robotics, building probes, working in glove boxes, dealing with communications, handling emergencies as they come up. And of course, they do all sorts of other amazing STEM programs too.
amazing. There is the spacecraft ahead of its integration inside Atlantis' payload bay. Again, this is not a small spacecraft, as you can tell by the humans for scale there in their clean suits. I wonder what facility this would have been. I don't know if you know, Sire, but this is intriguing to me because there are several payload facilities at KSC where they could have had this. It doesn't look like the OPF yet. It looks like it's in a different building from this point of view.
This is the Safe 2, the Spacecraft Assembly and Encapsulation Facility 2,
Wow,
before moving to the Vertical Processing Facility where it was given the IUS.
very nice. No, what's this character here? There we go. This is an intriguing photograph as well. This looks like it's inside a very large facility.
I'm wondering if that's one of the instruments on board, or I'm
Yeah,
trying
it
to
was
tell
in the
what that is.
collection. People wondering where I get these photographs from. There are public photographs, obviously from our mission, but we get a lot of photographs as well, which are actually original photographs that have been scanned digitally so that we can get hold of them in L2. And that means they're protected forever because they're made digital, and they could easily be lost otherwise to a house move or something like that. A shoebox. We've had shoebox fulls of photographs being put through a digitizer so we could save them forever. And just imagining if that didn't happen and that shoebox was lost, those photographs are gone from history. So it's so important we do that, and that's why. Then we put them out into a public show like this, so you all get to see them, which is also very important as well. Yeah, we've got a crew doing some. This is all pre-launch photographs again. This looks like it's part of their safety briefing. They obviously do a lot of the safety evacs and the emergency egress system checks and what have you. And it looks like Danny's fire hoses they're playing with there.
That's what it looks like, yeah. Trying
Now
to
then,
think
what's
what else that
this?
would be used for, because again, unless it's just showing them what systems they had.
This could be personal items, maybe that they're going to put into mid-deck lockers.
Those are definitely what you would see inside the mid-deck locker. So if you've ever
Yeah,
seen the mid-deck, there's a whole bunch of, panels, so to speak, on the wall. Behind each of them are different, shelves or units full of items. Each of them has their own specific label. Each label is mission specific and changed out during the missions. I know that because I have one of them. So, uh,
awesome.
the yeah, I have the card that was on the, mid-bay deck for STS-118's food supply.
Amazing. These pre-launch photographs are always a mystery. I always like going through them without doing any kind of research because I just like watching them, looking at them, and seeing what Sawyer comes up with his Sawyer's facts. So it's really kind of intriguing. But this one is more obvious. This is Atlantis going to 39B because this was 39B, wasn't it, Sawyer?
Correct. Yes, it was.
There we go. Again, for people wondering the scale of it, these are not small vehicles. Yes, I know we're spoilt by Starship these days, and that is a massive vehicle. But one thing people may not realize is that what is holding this stack upright are the bolts on the aft of the SRBs. Literally. I used to, and I'd forgive anyone else for thinking that it was tied down at the orbiter as well. It wasn't. They had a tail service mast on either side, which was connected, obviously. But there was nothing, there was no platforms there holding the engine bells onto the mobile launch platform or anything like that. It was all held upright by bolts that would then be frangible and then explode at T0 to release the stack.
Yeah, the nuts would literally split in half with an explosive, and that would release it. Uh, if one of them didn't release, I mean, there was enough force that it would go anyway, but you pretty much kind of needed all of those to fire to then release the whole vehicle and not rip any parts of it off.
Yeah, I did ask an engineer about that many, many moons ago, and apparently it would, like you say, the force would release it, but it'd rip off part of the aft skirt, which would be bad. So that
Yeah,
was
just a
not a
little.
desirable situation to have. Here's a crew with a smaller model, but it's still Columbia. You'd think they'd have some more models based on the orbiter they were flying on, wouldn't you? But this was a thing that throughout the shuttle history, they tend to always have a model of Columbia. So maybe it's
There
the
was
only
only
ones they
three
had.
orbiters at the time too. They could at least have different models.
You think the amount of money in the program, they could have made the effort to get some more models. Anyway, this is a render. Now, this is render as in render in the 80s. So we're talking about a drawing here. This is before proper CGI. This is probably hand drawn, which is beautiful as well, by the way, of Magellan and with the upper stage and the orbiter below. That's what I was looking for. I was mumbling my words because I was too busy looking for the orbiter. You can see it's hand drawn. This is not CGI. this
Yeah.
is this is great. I personally think it looks wonderful. I really do like it. Oh, we've even got the artist. Look at this. Tellyman. There we go.
And
I
by the
didn't
way,
even
this was
notice.
the first ever interplanetary mission launched by the space shuttle. It had also been 11 years since NASA had launched any interplanetary mission for that matter. So this was quite a big deal. And they literally had to choose the type of transfer that they were going to use to get from Earth to Venus because of the shuttle deployment, its orbit, its trajectory. So the shuttle played a huge role in deciding how it was going to get there, which turned out it was going to be basically traveling around the sun 1.5 times before making its way over there on a close approach.
Very cool. Right. A few more photographs pre-launch. Then we're getting to the money shots of launch, which everyone loves. You can't beat a shuttle launch photograph. There is crew.
And cake.
Is the cake a lie? No, the cake is not a lie. Still not a lie. And that is, as we've seen on previous Shuttle Sundays, a cake. Again, cakes and pies is an American and British thing. I'm going to call it a cake. Sorry, is it a cake?
It is a cake, yes.
Whew, there we go. The cake is not a lie. There we go. Of the patch. And that is a traditional thing. There we go. There's crew walk out. With a traditional wave, you do not have a crew wave, a walkout without a wave. And we still see that with the Dragon missions. We'll see that with the Axiom. No, we won't see that. I
We
don't
will
think we'll see
not.
it with the Axiom. No, no, that's right, because it's private. But the crew Dragon NASA missions to the ISS, they have the walkout from the ONC building, and you get that same view, and you get the same waves, and you get the difference being they don't go in an Astrovan, they go into the Teslas. So that is just a slight difference there. There is a
Right.
massive bug on the camera on the right hand side. Have you?
Oh, it's taking over the VAB. It's when bugs attack.
Oh my word, that caught my eye.
Yeah, oh,
And that
it's been there for a bit. I've been trying not to discuss it too much.
oh, there we go. There is the crew with the probe, which they're gonna spacecraft. They're gonna take out. Look at the old NASA worm sign on the press conference desk. Nice little Easter egg there. And this is a beautiful shot when the pre-launch photographs. There is a reflection shot, 39B, with the ramp up to the fixed service structure and the rotating service structure. For people who may not know what I'm talking about there, and maybe new, because we have talked about it before, the fixed service structure is this, the tall tower there, which they've modified on 39A, and SpaceX use it, but they've taken it down on 39B, which is this pad, because they made it a clean pad for SLS. And there is a rotating service structure. As you imagine, rotates and encapsulates the vehicle, provides weather protection, but also, as you can see there, if my mouse is in sync with me talking, is where they can put payloads in, and they can put the payloads in through the payload by doors there, and that's how to do it. Beautiful structure. And there's the water tower. The water tower on 39A is still the same one from the shuttle era, and it still overflows about 6 seconds before a Falcon launch because that's how they know it's full. They didn't put gauges in it. They said, well, we'll just keep filling it until it overflows, then we know it's full. That is a true story. Okay, right. Let's see what else we got here. Let's go on to launch photographs and we'll start playing some videos. Here we go. Glorious. I
Oh,
challenge anybody to tell me there's some bad shuttle launch photographs. I don't think there is such a thing. I don't think it's possible. They have the RS-25Ds, the SSMEs. Wayne Hale always shouts at me on X when I say RS-25Ds. He says, no, they're SSMEs.
yeah.
But you can see the plume differences. You've got the solid propellant of the SRBs there, and you've got the liquid propellant of the RS-25Ds. I'm going to call them that.
How clean it is too, because that's hydrogen,
Yeah.
hydrogen
The
now.
exhaust was water vapor. There's a Jeremy Clarkson. We were talking before about the show before about Jeremy Clarkson, weren't we? He actually did
Yeah.
a Top Gear segment at Stennis, and he was there for an RS-25 test, and he said that is generating a rain cloud. And he says somewhere later, someone in Mississippi is going to get wet washing, and it did start raining while he was doing it. He says like, NASA's playing God with the weather. There's a great clip. If you go on YouTube, they call it an SRB test. I don't know why. It's just YouTube. Someone named it wrong on YouTube, but it's on there. Just do Jeremy Clarkson Top Gear shuttle engine testing, something like that. That'll find you the video. It's actually quite good. There's another sideways shot, which is great because you can see the bottom part of the mobile launch platform and how it's raised off the ground. This is a different angle as well. I didn't realize the angles were so great on this.
Yeah, there's
That is,
basically going all the way around A and B, there's kind of like a half moon mound, so to speak. So on that mound, there's typically three different camera location spots. There's this one, there was the dead on view that you saw on the previous photo, and then usually one which is kind of looking more westward uh, at the far end of the mound.
yeah. And I didn't plan this. The photographs I've selected for this folder of launch is going around the pad. This is great. And we don't have Jack on for this one, but the crane is still
The
there. The
crane will
cranes,
remain.
yes. And there is the other part which people always ask about. That is the gaseous vent hood, which is the beanie cap. And that would go on top of the external tank to vent off the gaseous hydrogen away from the stack, because that is something you don't want around a vehicle that's lighting up.
Which you can
We
go
got,
underneath one, by the way, at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. They have it in the Atlantis exhibit, although they've mounted it with a projector to play games for kids under it. But it's there.
now I was really excited about that until you mentioned they've mounted video games on it.
It has a projector pointing downwards from underneath it. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, They've, they didn't need to do that, Sawyer. They-
You're preaching to the choir here.
oh dear me! Right, have I got one more, or is that it? No, I've got one more. There we go. And there is a better view from it, actually. You can see there the vent port holes there. Look, there's two either side. There we go. And there's a future, if we get to it, we're many, many missions off it. But there is one fun last end of the shuttle program where they basically could not confirm it was out of the way. And they were holding and holding. They have 4 minutes to hold on these ISS missions. And they were holding and holding and basically just said, yep, we verified it's out of the way. You're going to proceed. That was quite dramatic as well.
You remember which one that was?
I'm not going to say Sawyer because I don't want. I'm going to. Oh, go on. You can tell him. Was it 133?
No, 135, the last
35.
one.
What was 133's hold?
I mean, 133 kept getting delayed. It delayed like 6 or 7 times. But
Oh, yeah. I do know that there was 133 and 135, and I couldn't remember which one was which for the
133 had
reason.
like a 4-month delay at one point. I'm trying to remember exactly what that was. But 135, I know that because I was on the air during it trying to figure out what was going on and panicking along with everyone else.
Sorry, Flex.
Yes, yes, I was there for 135. Shocking.
There we go. Right. So I'm now going to play the launch video, and people are going to go, well, Chris, that's something I found on YouTube. Absolutely. Of course it is. And I'd be very disappointed if they did take them off YouTube. But this is great because this is NASA TVs, but with CNN's overlays. Now, I mention overlays because, as you know from watching the likes of SpaceX and even our live streams, you'll get telemetry and things like that, which is kind of a new thing. I remember Jamie with TMRO, with then Space Vidcast,
Mhm.
was pretty much the first to properly use overlays, which actually got her the job at SpaceX. Part of the reason, I should say, for getting a job at SpaceX, and that's why SpaceX's webcasts are so good, because I saw what Jamie was doing with Space Vidcast, and that was what I thought was the first time we saw actual telemetry on screen. Oh no, STS-30 had it. Bear with me as I play this video, and let me know if you get the sound, by the way.
The external tank heaters on the ET to orbiter structural attachments have been turned off. Orbiter computers have, and we have gone for auto-sequence start. T-minus 26 seconds, 25. T-minus 21 seconds. The SRB nozzle gimbal profile underway. T-minus 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. We have a go for main engine start. 7, 6. We have main engine start. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. A new era for planetary science begins as Atlantis clears the tower.
Roger, roll, Atlantis.
This is Mission Control. The roll program confirmed. Standing by for engines to throttle down. All three engines will be throttled back to 65% performance as the vehicle passes through the area of maximum dynamic pressure. Three engines now at 65%. Velocity now 1,000 feet per second. Atlantis 2 miles downrange. Engines now throttling back up to 104% performance. Atlantis velocity now 1,500 feet per second.
Go and throttle up.
Roger, go.
Standing by for a separation from the SRBs. Velocity now 2,000 feet per second. Altitude 10 nautical miles. Downrange distance 8 nautical miles.
External solid rocket tanks dropping away.
This is Mission Control. All APUs looking good. Three engines at 104%.
That'll happen in about 12 seconds. Solid rocket booster separation. Space shuttle now
This
continuing
is
to
Mission
head
Control,
toward space
SRB,
on
confirmed.
liquid fuel.
Velocity 4,300 feet per second. Atlantis downrange 35 nautical miles at an altitude of 30 nautical miles.
The voice is the mission
Three engines
control.
all looking good at 104%.
Billy Deason, first female ascent communicator. And you probably heard at about the 1 minute and 6 second mark, the command was given, go at
Atlantis,
throttle up.
Performance nominal.
This is Mission Control.
Which
This is
nobody
Mission Control. That
will hear it
call
anymore
lets
without
you know that the
thinking of-
SRBs and engines are
See? Look at this. Look at these graphics.
Ooh.
It's like we're living in the future now, Sawyer. This is amazing. But yeah, this is the first time, especially, we've been going through the shuttle missions one by one. It's the first time we've seen telemetry on screen. And I'm thinking it must be the first time it was used. Now, as you could hear, there was some CNN commentary in the background. It did sound like Dan Rather. I don't know if it was.
It sounded like
It did, didn't it?
I'm not sure though.
We'll have to find out, but you could tell it was basically, he was talking about external fuel tanks dropping away at SRB separation. I was thinking, hang on a minute, no, but you can forgive him for that. I thought it was interesting as well that he mentioned that was the first time there was a female ascent commentator on NASA TV's coverage, which you know, I mean, she'd have been in mission control use, and that's how it works. You have the POA, the PAO at the actual control center. They're actually there. They're not in some studio somewhere. They're actually at the mission control. That's always been the case with NASA. So that was like the first time ever. I didn't realize that. It's amazing. You can get a grasp of the era we're talking about. This is still like, you know, the 80s. It kind of makes sense that way, doesn't it? If you think about it, that, you know, these things have taken time to progress. But
Yep,
that
it was May of 1989.
yeah, I mean, to me, I mean, my age, 89, doesn't sound like that long ago, but it is.
What if I told you I was -5 then?
Oh no, Sawyer. Don't make me feel old. Anyway, I
But
think I
by
was
the
in
way,
university
you
by
were
then.
just really quick before you were talking about STS-133. I remembered what delay you were thinking of, and that was the ground umbilical carrier plate.
There we go. Thank you. Yes, I knew those things. We'll have fun when we eventually get to those missions.
The fun is the
Hopefully, I'll
word
still
for
be
it.
around by then, you know. But it's a case of there will be real fun memories because for anybody wondering, I basically got really into this as in NSF during return to flight missions. Anything STS 114 onwards, I was deeply like day by day watching the processing, you know, the daily process and everything like that. So that's where I come more into my fold of shuttle fun. Thankfully, we've got Sawyer, and Sawyer is the biggest shuttle historian I know. So this is great that we can have Sawyer's knowledge on these earlier missions that I know about, but I'm, you know, by no means know as much as Sawyer does. Right, let's go to mission photographs. Here we go. We've got quite a few here, so this might be quite a lot of random stuff. This looks like, I mean, these are in the collection that we were sent, so I assume that is something relevant to something. I don't know if you can identify it, Sawyer.
Uh,
No,
Unless it was one of the crystal experiments on board, I'm not sure.
could be. It was relevant enough for them to take a photograph and for it to put into the collection, so there we go. Now, I do like this one anyway, even though you might not see what we're looking at. Just for the laptop, look at this. I say
Brick.
laptop. Yeah, it's a brick. That is not small and that is not light. Well, that is the era we're talking about here right now. There we go, another one. That's better from a different angle. Big bulky thing. But that'd have been like top of the range at the time. Now I don't know if this was training or not, but I just found it fun, so I made sure I got one of the collections. Maggot on board.
I believe that's probably related to. I'm not sure which branch of the military, but it's related to that. And then Norm Thagard on the left there, again being from Northern Florida, supporting the Challenger Center in Tallahassee, which is home to Florida State University.
There we go. Really nice view. This looks like it's through the upper windows on the aft. Now there are two windows at the. I'm trying to describe to people who may not know the opposite. The ceiling of the flight deck where you can look up. There are two windows at the back as well, the aft, but that would be facing the cargo bay, the payload bay, so you'd know it was those windows. So this obviously is the overheads.
Yep, and this was had to be where the shuttle was oriented, where it was, I guess, in what we're used to thinking upside down, so that the payload bay and the top of the um, crew compartment were facing Earth, and the heat
Absolutely.
shield was facing away from Earth.
Very good. By the way, I do see questions. I'm going to just go through these photographs. We've got two more videos and another set of photographs to go. So after these set of photographs here, what I'll do is I'll take some questions, make it sure it's interactive. Again, people who are watching the recording of this, which is most people, are probably thinking Chris is talking to me and I'm watching the recorded video. Why is Chris talking to me? It's because we do this live on Space Coast Live and record it. You're seeing a recording if you're watching the recorded version. There we go. I'm sure it's baffling to some people still, though. Why is Chris talking to me? Again, this is where we need Jack, really. This Jack would know about this camera. But Sawyer, you're a photographer as well, to be fair. And maybe you know what this camera is.
Trying to see. I mean, for at this point, they were using Hasselblads, I believe, still, just like the Apollo days. And in fact, on this mission, they actually had one of them where the shutter got stuck, so they actually were down a camera this flight.
There we go. Next photograph. Again, this Now I would have thought this was in the crew mission photographs. Again, it's very hard to tell if they've put some training ones in, but it does look like they're in space. It's hard to tell, though, but again, this is
I
more
think
about
the
the
hair
experiments.
I think the hair makes it look like it's space just because
Oh, there
it's
we go, yeah.
but, of the experiments on board that they had something physical to look at, it could very well have been, one of the floating zone crystal growth and purification experiment, so, basically seeing how crystals grow in microgravity. They also had a fluids experiment apparatus.
Ooh.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
and there's the Rockwell sign. I recognize the Rockwell logo, so they're involved. And Sawyer, I need your American football help. I assume it's American football. Utah State University Aggies?
Yeah, that's their sports team for Utah State University, and that has to be one of the fluids experiments then, because Rockwell had a partnership with NASA's Office of Commercial Programs to work on the crystal experiment.
Very good. Next photograph. And there it is again. There's crew. That's definitely in space.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about that
What's the
one.
giveaway, huh?
Yeah, I wonder. Now, here we go. Here is the star of the mission, Magellan. As it was being raised in the payload bay before it was released in deployment, and I'm sure we got several sequences. I've got a nice little video to show it as well. There it is deployed and on its way. And then eventually, once it gets enough separation, it will fire up this engine. And this is the engine that will basically, it acts like an upper stage, if you can imagine that. So the shuttle orbiter is taking the payload bay up like first stage ascent, even though it's not just first stage ascent. But to get it on its way, and the same with geo satellites and all those other spacecraft they sent to deep space, they got to do another firing because they're in low Earth orbit when they deploy this.
Not only is it like an upper stage, it's called the inertial upper stage.
Indeed. That's a good photograph.
Uh,
Accelerated deployed.
the start of a 27 million mile journey for that spacecraft to go to Venus.
Wow.
And
And
again, the
there's,
first interplanetary mission launched aboard the space shuttle.
you can see the cradle in the payload bay here. This is the cradle I would keep. Remember, this is not easy. It's been taken up a set on a rather shaky because of the SRB's orbiter, so it has to be really well protected. It will be obviously able to cope with some vibrations, to say the least, but it's still a lot for it to cope with, and then to keep it all intact. You do not want this thing moving around in the payload bay when you're launching, because that'll throw off the center of gravity and what have you. It really is a lot involved in making sure these are taken up to space safely for the orbiter, and then for the spacecraft itself to still be in one piece by the time to deploy it. Another one there. Lots of these photographs, but oh, there we go. I do have my Shuttle Sunday name the area time, so here we go. I know that in YouTube comments, someone will be able to chat GTP or something like this and find out where it is. But if you do know in chat right now, if you recognize this area of the planet, there'd be a reason why I took the photographs. So there may be a clue there. They tend to take photographs of their local areas, the astronauts, but that it may be a viewpoint somebody recognizes in chat. So I'll leave it up in there just for a little bit longer. New Orleans, I think maybe says Lord of Random. See, I wouldn't have a clue.
And
Unless it
they
was
did have
Yorkshire.
an entire Earth-facing experiment on this one, but it was in regards to lightning. So they had a basically wide-angle camera in the payload bay that would be continually taking video, as well as astronauts taking stills of lightning down on Earth, so that they could study how lightning interacts with the clouds around it, how it interacts with other strikes of lightning. And this was kind of supplementary to the experiments that they were doing at the time, using a U-2 I guess not spy in this case plane anymore as a way to study above the cloud storms. So this kind of helped, although I don't know which was more expensive, a U-2 spy plane or Space Shuttle Atlantis.
There we go. I've left it up there just for people to look through. Look who there. Look who's there now. I challenge chat
You
for anyone to say I don't know who that is, because I
mean the
think
person
we're
right in the
talking about
bottom?
Yeah, we're talking about the most famous person from Mission Control, Mr. Gene Krantz, who I was mumbling my words there because I was too busy looking at the old-fashioned CRT monitors they've got. Look at this. Oh my word. I mean, again, that just shows you the era. That Mission Control logo, MOD, Mission Operations Directive, I think it was the full name of it, was a logo that stayed all the way through. And I think they've got variations of it, which went through to even Artemis. It's something that's always kept a tradition of how they presented themselves. But yeah, it's what a person to have next to you. I mean, the knowledge base you could rely on from that person must have been amazing for the other people there, especially some of the newer controllers in Mission Control Center. Really is awesome. And that is a great view there. Obviously of landing, there's a clue. But look at the old displays. They've renovated this place several times since. But it is, it's impressive to see how this all worked. I mean, this worked for space missions, this technology, which we probably don't appreciate today with all our fancy computers and what have you. And that's that photograph again. Why is there a cow on the flight deck, Sawyer? Did we even know? It's a bull. There must be a story behind that.
Wow, yeah. Precursor to McGregor Live?
Yeah. Moo. And there's the crew in space. We've got a few more of, oh, that's nice, from orbit. Got a few more from the payload bay. Here we go. Again, deployment sequence. That was quite nicely timed in the way that they displayed. Oh, and a fourth one. Is the fifth one going to be better? Oh, no, that's the last one. There we go. So we had 4 photographs of there. Right, I'm going to leave this on screen while I take some questions, but I want to thank some people first. We don't normally get support on these streams. Again, we're doing these streams because, I mean, I can speak for you, Sarah, as well. These are fun. I mean, this talk about shuttle. I'm not going to refuse the chance to do that. So this is fun, and this is opportunity also to have a little library of missions that we can refer to. Because before we did these Shuttle Sunday shows, we used to say, we'll talk about a mission that reminds us of something, and say, oh yes, STS-25 or something like that, and we could go back and now actually share the show from that mission. So we're building up the complete library of missions that we can say we can refer back to, and people may be searching. There may be some school kid who's been given an assignment to do a dissertation on an old shuttle mission, and if our video helps them, that's great. So I love stuff like that. That's STEM. I mean, that is just a benefit to everybody. So I like that. And we find it fun. Mike Alpha Tango Sierra Mats gifted 10 Red Team memberships right at the start of the show. Thank you, Mats. That's amazing. Phil gifted a Red Team membership, one of our regulars. And then Ari Guest has gifted 20 Red Team memberships over the space of 3. So, Ari, thank you so much. That is amazing support, and not the first time. And I see your name all the time, as well as Phil and Matt's on Starbase content. So, to have you over here on the Shuttle Sunday and doing the same is really, really awesome. And I recognize your names now. I mean, literally, I recognize that's how regular you guys are, which is amazing. And thank you. Severin asks, why don't we see frost on the external tank during launch? I thought it uses cryogenic propellants, and surely the white frost on an orange tank would be easy to see. So yeah.
That's a really good question, actually. I've never heard anyone ask that. But when you think about it, they have the Sophie on it, the spray-on foam insulation. So that's literally the point of the insulation, is to keep all of that cool inside and keep the thermal conditioning in that. So yes, there is a metal to the external tank structure, obviously, the pressurized portion of it, just like we see with Dragon. But again, Dragon, you see it directly onto the metal. In this case, you have the foam that's on top of the metal, so you don't necessarily see it.
Very good. The Shrew 88. This is a question we know we can cover because we talked about it after 51L. Why didn't the crews wear those blue pressure suits?
Um,
I,
the one of them up in orbit, or
I would say there's 2 parts to this. One is there's the blue overalls. Now I know Shrew knows what, so he's not asking about the blue overalls that they used to wear before they went to the ACES, the orange pumpkin suits. but the blue suit may be the one with the maggot on board. It's like a training suit, isn't it?
I've honestly never seen those before, so I'm not totally sure what those were for, unless it was part of some kind of bio experiment that they were doing. But yeah, typically after Challenger and they stopped doing just the flight suits and the helmet, they went on to the Aces, the basically giant orange pumpkin suits that we see. And those pumpkin suits stayed all the way through until the end of the shuttle program and are continuing now into Artemis.
Indeed. Lord of Random is trying to do a spoiler. I've done some research. It's going to be about 30 more missions until the crane is gone.
But
Let's not tell Jack. Keep it
who's
between
counting?
us. Don't tell Jack. Because when Jack comes on for the next Shuttle Sunday, we'll have him all hyped up going, is the crane still there, Jack? Is the crane still there? And yeah, Lord Random, let's keep that between us, all right? Yeah, let's keep it quiet, all right? Matt's Alpha Tango, Sierra's back. Matt's. What was the role of the big crane on top of the launch tower? They removed it later. But what was it doing during shuttle launch preps? I don't think it was really used at all, was it, Sawyer?
I can't remember it ever being used from those early
No,
missions, if we're being honest.
I can't either. Now, I want to play you a little video, which is a 1-minute video, but it's also a kind of little evolution of NASA TV's coverage. Remember, they were basically, the internet was pretty much in its infancy. We're not talking about the sort of NASA TV that you got used to and maybe appreciate now because of the way the internet works. I remember the first videos I used to watch were on Real Player. If anyone remembers that in chat, it was like
Yep.
it's like Windows Media Player, but in the very early days. And then they did live shows on that, and I was like, "Wow, this is like terrible quality, but it's live, and I'm watching it on my computer. This is incredible." So NASA TV was building up towards that by doing TV stuff, and this is a good example of the kind of shuttle show they would do. It was called Shuttle Showcase. I'm going to play it so you can not listen to me, but actually watch it.
May 4th, 1989.
Atlantis, Houston, everything down here looks real good to us.
The 5-person crew of Atlantis prepares for the first deployment of a planetary spacecraft from the space shuttle.
Now looking at the business end of the inertial upper stage Magellan stack. This is the nozzle for the solid rocket motor.
Atlantis, Houston, Sunnyvale had a good direct check and their command is complete.
Okay, Pierre, we copy. We're proceeding into the IUSPI lock checkout.
Roger that.
A little more than 6 hours after launch, Magellan and its inertial upper stage booster are released from Atlantis' payload bay to begin Magellan's voyage to peel back the layers of the planet Venus.
Shuttle Showcase. Before This Week in Spaceflight, there was Shuttle Showcase. That's amazing. So that is an example of how NASA TV was kind of evolving, because that was the first time I think I've ever seen a video of it. They may have done it for previous missions, but no one ever recording of it, but we got a recording of that. So it gives you an example of how NASA were trying to get the public more involved in the missions, because this was a big deal. I mean, let's face it, this was a big deal mission. Now, we had some landing photographs that I'm going to show first, because a lot of these are great. I must admit, when I was downloading the landing photographs for this mission, I was really impressed on what we were, the photography of this one, because it was better than some of the previous ones we've seen. So I'm going to go through these landing photographs here. Sorry, where did it land, Sawyer?
This was at Edwards Air Force Base out in California. So this was a West Coast landing, but this was on runway 22, which I believe was one of the paved runways.
There we go. Really, I mean, obviously the weather conditions probably helped a lot, but these are beautiful photographs. There's a crew coming off. They've got more landing photographs coming yet. Here we go. Let's look at this. Let's look at the heat shield. There we go. Look at this. You can see the battle scars already starting to form on Atlantis from her returns. They used to get some real big battle scars on their white TPS blankets, but you can see just there on the after the vehicle, it's been coming through the re-entry. Really impressive. Wheels down. The SSMEs were tilted up. Remember the gimbal, just like you see on the Raptors with the Raptor videos on Starship. They did gimbal.
Yep, you can see the speed brake also kind of deployed with the split tail,
Yeah.
the gear down. So that had to have been about 400 feet above the ground. Basically
Yeah,
about 10 seconds away from touchdown.
Well, we're a little bit out of sequence because I've downloaded them, but the file listing puts them in different order. Of course it does. But so we're going to go through these. But that's a nice picture. I think that's the one I nearly use as a thumbnail.
Yeah, I love that shot of Atlantis.
There we go. Wheels deploying at that point there.
Ooh, it's cool mid-deploy.
Yeah.
Those things, once the doors open, basically gravity pulled them all the way down. They thunk and lock into place. And yeah, there's no retracting them.
There we go. They're off the orbiter itself there. I like how they always have the orbiter in the photograph as well. It tends to be a thing. That's a better one. There we go. That's less cropped out.
Yep, as you can see them already working on purging all the hazardous gases, getting it ready to roll it, to then be sent back to Florida to get prepared for its next flight.
Yep. A little bit out of a sequence, but they're all good photographs, and it's good to show them all while I'm here because I can click through them. Doesn't take me much to click on things.
Only thing we need now is EJ taking a look at what those cars are.
Yeah, EJ will know as well. And that's a lovely one to end with, and that is the touchdown, main landing gear touchdown. Look at that. Really, really nice. I have one more video to play, and that is the crew narrating. Now, these are very, very. So I'm going to be skipping through parts of this, but I'll be keeping on the main parts, which is launch, part of the deployment, and then landing, and then we'll end the show on that. So let me just quickly click on this video.
Here we are, getting ready to go out to the pad in our launch escape suits, which are relatively comfortable at this point because they've been cooled down pretty well. Nice day. It was wonderful to see so many folks there to see us off, and we had a very pleasant trip out to the pad.
Here we're picking up with the launch sequence. As a result of our first scrub, the attitude in the cockpit was actually relatively relaxed. Of course, there's a limit to how relaxed you can be when someone lights off that big torch beneath you. Here's the orbiter going by the launch tower, clearing the tower. See the orbiter of the vehicle roll to place us in a heads-down attitude and to align the vehicle in the proper azimuth for its ascent phase. Here's a sequence taken out the overhead window using the handheld camcorder. We'll show you a little more of that later on. Continuing on up in first stage. As Dave mentioned, we were wearing the launch escape suits this time around. They provided a little more acoustic insulation, and it seemed a little quieter to me than my first flight. I think that was shared by the other crew members that had compared it to previous launches. The next sequence will be the IUS deploy.
Once you get on orbit, we got the payload bay doors open, and we took a good look at Magellan. It was good to see that it was in the same pristine condition as when we took off. We started the elevation procedures for the deploy. And inside, once we got on orbit, we had to reconfigure a number of systems for on-orbit operations. Dave reaching back to one of the overhead panels and Norm helping him out. And shortly after that, we started into the procedures that we use to deploy the IUS. Principally, it's the panel in back of me and over to the right of Norm. Once we elevated up to 29 degrees and then on up to 52 degrees for the deploy, we went ahead and threw the switch and sent Magellan on its way. It comes out of the payload bay at about half a foot per second, and during the first minute we just sit there and watch it leave the orbiter bay. We're in free drift as far as the shuttle is concerned, and the way it is deployed, as you know, is a super zip. It's a mechanical or a metal band around the IUS that is separated, and several springs send it from the payload bay. IUS here, it's flown. It's a very, very reliable upper stage. We used it several times, and it put Magellan on its trajectory The attitude was good, and it was within 3 meters per second of where they said it was going to be, which is pretty remarkable performance. So it's been a real workhorse of the space program, especially return to flight after Challenger. And right about this time, you'll see the rate pick up of the payload. It's when we put a -X burn in to the orbiter. It separates us from the payload, and that's the last maneuver that we do until 15 minutes after deploy, when we go ahead and do our separation from the IUS. This is a shot taken out the overhead window, close-up view of IUS. It's about 400 to 500 feet away. When we finally do our burn, it's about 1,000 to 1,500 feet away, and this is the business end of the IUS we're looking at right here. Inside the gold insulation is the IUS solid rocket motor. And this is when the solar arrays deployed. They deployed 10 minutes after the IUS was deployed in connection with the RCS system on IUS being activated. And this is a nice shot we got. We initially thought that Venus was going to be too close to the sun for us to even see, but we didn't realize till we got up there and followed it several times after sunset. We could see Venus trailing the sun at the terminator. So we got a picture of Venus sunset, and down in the lower portion you see some of the clouds, the thunderheads that had built up.
We had a mid-deck experiment called a fluid experiment apparatus, which you can see here. My hands are inside of this. It's a little furnace. We were growing indium crystals. It was really an excellent mid-deck for us to work on. We changed out samples and actually interacted with the science. Here's an example of the crystal. The rougher section to the right was done at a lower temperature than this striated section, which was melted at a higher temperature. So by adjusting the wattage, we could adjust the temperature which this indium was being melted. If you get it too high, it'll break. If you get it too low, it doesn't melt through. So it's sort of touchy. And actually, the wattage was different on orbit than it was on the ground by about 10 watts. We controlled it with our little experiment computer, which worked great, different floppy disks for each experimental run.
Things are just very prominent. Lake Okeechobee is very prominent there. You can see all of the Miami area, and that's a huge area these days with nearly 12 million people that the state has. In addition to the motion pictures, obviously we took a lot of still photos. And while this is a camera view, the fact is that with the naked eye you can see almost everything that you can see in this view. This is a picture of the Cape, and you can see the shuttle landing facility, the 2 launch pads, including the one from which we had launched just a few days before. The Florida Keys, just a beautiful view. And you can certainly see the Metroplex area there, the metropolitan area of Miami, and of course Lake Okeechobee coming into view. And I think I'm next here, and I get a little tangled up in the cords as well. But there's always someone there to grab you if you do get lost in space. And in our persona as Sven and Ole, we try to outdo Hans and Franz with their little girly legs and do our pump you up act. And now, Mary Cleve. Nice aerobatics.
Thanks.
And Dave.
Okay, we thought our last day on orbit would be a pretty easy day. We're going to do some more crew movie and Earth Obs type of video work, but we ended up changing out the computer, and this is a real good shot in the avionics bay where we had to work. It was pretty tight, but being in 0G, there were no real pressure points, so it was pretty easy to stay in there for a couple hours and do the work. One of the biggest problems is housekeeping. As we brought out each one of the wire bundles, we made sure that it was marked correctly. Mary and I both checked them to make sure that when we put it back together, we put it back right. It would have been pretty embarrassing if we wouldn't have got the right cables hooked up. And so we marked everything. We put it in bags. All the screws and bolts float around, so we had to make sure that we kept track of all of those. And once we got it back in, Mary's showing here torquing down the bolts. Each one of the bolts has specifications. This was 100 inch-pounds that we had to do these two, and there were a couple other eye bolts that we had to go to 30 inch-pounds. Once they were in place, then we hooked up all the electrical connectors, we powered it up, and the computer worked great.
After getting the computer replaced, we got a good night's sleep, got up the next day, suited up to come home. This is just a little demo of how that can be done. It's fairly easy to get in and out of the suit in zero gravity, although it isn't all that comfortable to wear. And then we started downhill on schedule. This is a picture of plasma interaction around the orbiter, which Mark was able to get with the camcorder. There's some spectacular photography there of the plasma sheath discharging. This is pretty rare photos. Then you can see out the window, again with the same cam, the Earth horizon as we do the roll maneuvers that allow us to guide ourselves down the reentry track. All of this went very smoothly. There's a little bit of high Mach buffet, and you can see that reflected in the slight shaking of the camera. I said Mark. Actually, I think Mary was taking all of these. Mark took the photos uphill. And then finally, back at Edwards, Ron flew a little bit after we went subsonic, and then I took it for the landing. It was very smooth all the way down until we got close, relatively close, the last few thousand feet, when the turbulence and the crosswinds, which we had expected, since we were trying to get a crosswind developmental test objective done, became obvious. So the orbiter flies very well through that sort of conditions. Here's another picture out the side window as we come down. We had no difficulty approaching the runway. Some mild compensation for the crosswind. And then, as you'll see, it lands pretty smoothly. Ron is going to do the most important job that he has to do in the flight here in just a second, which is to lower the landing gear, which we're very appreciative. Because we switched runways late in the game, we don't have as good a photographic coverage of the landing as we usually do, but it's still adequate to see that the orbiter is flying well. On touchdown, the crosswind becomes more evident and requires more compensation, but still it's quite safely flyable. We had a smooth, soft touchdown, a little bit of drift left, and then back to the center line. Rolled out about 10,000 feet and stopped without difficulty. And after having gotten out of our launch escape suits and cleaned up a little bit, we were ready to come back to Earth, where Dale Myers and Dick Truly were waiting to greet us, and where we could take a look at the orbiter and make sure that it was indeed in as good a shape as we had hoped. It looked fine, and we were happy to be back after what was very exciting, although to our mind too short a flight. We would have been happy to stay longer.
And that's the end of that video, which is quite compact. He did get through the launch, the main part of deployment. We've got part of the experiments as well for Mary Cleve, but also the landing as well, which was great because the landing was an important thing. I'm going to bring up the tag, the actual thumbnail tag. Where did the word tag come from? The thumbnail for this. While I'm going to bring up some questions which we're going to cover in future ones. I just want to bring them up. Sid asks, what was... Sorry.
I was going to say really quickly, one thing they pointed out there that we didn't get to talk about was the fact that this was the first time that one of the general purpose computers had to be replaced while in orbit. So there are 5 GPCs, as they're called, the general purpose computers. They have spares on board for that exact reason. And again, basically 4 of them need to be running anyway, so there's redundancy. But they had the spare, so they were able to do the replacement.
There we go. Yeah, that was right at the end of the video as well. That was quite a chunky cable they were replacing there as well. Not the modern day small size of a thumbnail kind of chips. We're talking about big old computers. Sid was asking
USB-C.
Yeah, Sid was asking what was the most flown SRB. Now that's kind of either that's a brilliantly well worded trick question, or we need to explain. And I will show in a future Shuttle Sunday how the SRBs were returned on Liberty Star and Freedom Star, but then taken apart, and the casings were reused, but they could be mixed and matched as well. So there was no one SRB that got reused as per se.
Right. So basically, each of them were made up of 4 segments. And so each of the segments had different parts to it that would be interchanged between missions as they were refurbished and worked on. It's kind of like a Lego set. It's like, sure, there's 5 bricks that would all work, so it doesn't really matter which one you pick. So, I mean, there were flights where you would have 8 or 9 missions under their belt, where you had parts that only had 1 mission under their belt.
I used to love talking about casings, and that was Chris Gebhardt, former SF Chris Gebhardt. I wonder if his NDA will allow him, because obviously can't talk about SpaceX. That's against the rules of employment at SpaceX. You can't come on a Starbase Live and start talking about Starship. That would be not allowed. But maybe Shuttle Sunday, because he used to write in L2, and I'll bring up on a Shuttle Sunday the casing history. He had casing histories, and so he had all of them. And we have the documentation that he wrote on the history of the casings for the SRB. So I will find a way of grabbing hold of that, showing it, and maybe having Chris G talk about it. That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
The other one was from Severin, who asks, and I want to bring up photographs of this, so we won't really cover it, but I'll bring up the answer. How did they lift the shuttle onto the 747 carrier aircraft? Do you have any pictures of that for this mission? For this mission, no, ironically, but for lots of other missions, we do. It was called a mate-demate device, the MDM. They had one at in California, had one at the shuttle landing facility. It had a mobile one, which they carried by train to the White Sands Space Harbor facility. And that was the mobile version of it. But the two fixed ones were at California and KSC. And I'll bring up photographs on the next Shuttle Sunday, a future Shuttle Sunday, where we can show. But yeah, that was a great device. They've all been taken down now since.
Yeah.
Sorry, actually, when did they take down the MDM at the shuttle line facility? Can you remember? Was it long after the shuttle program, or was it recently?
It was after the shuttle program because they had to refurbish them, get them ready for
course.
their homes, and then they were sent out to the homes, and that's where that mobile one also came in handy because they needed one at the airport in Washington, D.C., they needed one at the airport at JFK in New York, and they needed one in L.A. for Endeavour.
Of course. But not for Atlantis, because Atlantis did not fly to her retirement home. Atlantis, being the best shuttle orbiter, got to stay at Sorry, it's true. Got to stay at KSC and is now pride of place at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Center in her own exhibit at KSC, because KSC said, well, we want the best orbiter to be retired here in place in the home port. And they said, well, that's Atlantis, isn't it? That's correct. So that's a correct fact way of describing it, isn't it?
Minus the best shuttle part, yeah. They literally, instead of flying it, they drove it down the road. They tugged it over from the processing facility and all the operations they've been doing to decommission it inside the VAB, and rolled it over to where the Atlantis exhibit is currently. Fun fact, they built 3/4 of the exhibit, so they had built 3/4 of the walls, but they had to leave an entire wall of the building uncompleted so they could roll Atlantis in. And then once they rolled Atlantis over, then they finished building the fourth wall and closed in the whole building.
Amazing. Ron Smith, one of our long-time members and shuttle historians. The mate device was demolished at KSC in February 2015. So it was quite a while after. But that is, that is obviously on satellite. You can see it's gone. But the shuttle landing facility has got new life in it now. It's got commercial businesses building up around there. It's what's it called now? It's not called shuttle landing facility.
The launch and landing facility.
That's it, yeah. And hopefully they'll get things like strato launch. You never know. Lots of future things that could be applications that could be used on that very long runway. Anyway, enough to the digression. We've got photographs of the MDM, which I'll show today. But for STS-30, that's it. Thank you for joining us. Thanks to Jay in the background, because Jay's producing. Jay is the person who makes sure that the audio works and the videos show, because a numpty like me with my OBS is one thing, but making it work on a live stream is quite another thing. So thank you to Jay in the back for doing that. Thank you also, Sawyer, for being on with us, because your knowledge is absolutely vital, and as are your flexes as well. Sawyer, thank you, Sawyer.
Oh, my pleasure. I love talking about shuttle. It's always great to chat with you about it and to share the knowledge with everyone. Plus, it's fun doing the research each time of going, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
You know what? That is exactly where I go with these things. I'll even after we're going, oh, I didn't know about that. When I start showing them, I'll like that render we were showing, that artist impression. I didn't notice the small orbiter and the artist name in it either until I started zooming in. So it's all fun. It really is. You're learning all the time. Anyway, thank you all for joining us on this one. If you're recording, do post in the comments things you want to ask, because we'll be reading the comments. And there's a recorded show will be on later on today, I think, or tomorrow. The show will be on our channel. But until the next Shuttle Sunday, which is STS-31, thanks for joining us and goodbye.